Evening, Des Moines, Iowa, and the world. Welcome to the Doc and Lefty program here, broadcasting from the webcast1live.com studios in lovely, refrigerated Des Moines, Iowa this evening. It's Tuesday. It's 6:30, so we're bringing you the perspectives that you love from the sides you hate. It's Lefty coming to you, flying solo, and you know what usually happens, folks, is that when I'm in the captain's seat and my good friend, the good doctor, is out doing his thing, gallivanting around the countryside, I typically kind of go off script. You know, I'm the token liberal of the show. I'm the Colmes to his Hannity, the lame guy that just wants a little bit of reason amidst all the paranoid conspiracy theories. But what I got to say is, when I'm by myself, I get to direct things the way that I want, and typically there are lowest rated shows ever. So keep that in mind with our guests. I'm really excited about the guests we have here tonight, because it's a guy that I've wanted to talk to about some stuff for a long time. He's a friend of mine, and we were talking off air with Ed, and thanks a lot for the Fallon Forum leading us in here. But he's a guy that I want to talk to, and I knew him first, and I had him first, and I had been thinking about, even a couple of years ago when we first started, saying, you know, I need to get this guy on the show, because I think that we think similarly, and I'll just introduce him now. It's my good buddy Christjahn Beck, who happens to be the president of the Iowa State University Atheist and Agnostic Society, and we're going to talk about that here over the course of the hour, and also about some issues that I prepared Christjahn for before, you know, when he so graciously decided to be on the show, because I've got a beef, and I my new piece for the website is going to be up in the next few days, I'm sure, and it's all about what good liberals should say about religions, particularly Islam, and why Ben Affleck, Sam Harris, and Bill Maher were missing the point about about almost 2 months ago at this point, on the show that got so much attention and almost nearly cost Bill a speaking spot at the commencement address at Berkeley in California. So we'll get to Christjahn here in a second, but before we do, I want to make I want to say a little bit of something about what happened in Ferguson last night. We're not going to talk about it today. Doc's not here, and I know that he would love to weigh in. And we're probably not going to get to much of it next week either. We're going to be talking about, we're running about a week behind with some of the bigger stories just because of the holiday and travel schedules. We're going to be talking about the president's immigration announcement from last Thursday. We're going to be talking about that. Hopefully, if his schedule, right now it's confirmed, but if his schedule is able to stay the same, we're going to be talking about it with my old con law professor, Mark Kendi, next week about immigration, about executive action, some of the accusations being thrown around the president. And then I'm sure Ferguson's going to come up, and I'm definitely going to be writing about it here over the next week or two, so stay tuned for that. Check out the website, docandlefty.com. But I just wanted to make sure to acknowledge the terrible, heartbreaking situation last night. And you know what, Christjahn, I've introduced you. I know we're going to talk about your stuff here in a second, but if you want to chime in, that's I'd love to have you chime in. But this is a terrible situation, no matter how you slice it. If I've got Facebook friends out there that saw that I posted a status update earlier in the day about how, and it got a lot more likes from my conservative friends than I thought it would, because I thought that even though I handed out a little bit of shame on both sides, my disgust with a lot of the conservative people that I know about Ferguson and about the riots and about their reactions to the non-indictment of Officer Darren Wilson, I thought were particularly disgusting. I don't know if you Christjahn, I don't know if you saw much of this, but I was treated to numerous justice is done, get over it, see, we were right, hey, everybody, look at what happened, this thug got what he deserved, isn't that great? It's an 18-year-old boy died at the hands of an armed police officer, and regardless of whether he murdered this kid and a grand jury decided that there wasn't probable cause to lay charges against him, the very fact that you have a dead kid and a living officer is not an excuse to crow and to gloat about the death of this individual, and it's repulsive to me. Christjahn, were you seeing some of this yourself?
Yeah. I've seen a lot of that, and it's frankly a sign of not, and this is far from just the conservative right that this is a problem with. I think there's something very perverse with the media environment that we live in today, that you do see this gloating on both sides. When stuff like this happens, there's this kind of knee-jerk reaction to gloat and say, "I told you so," and I think it does a terrible disservice to all the people who are actually affected by this. And I think what gets swept under the rug is that it's a very important conversation that's heavily nuanced in a way that you just can't talk about on Twitter or on Facebook in any productive way.
Right. I think that's exactly right, and that's a lot more diplomatic than what I just said, so I appreciate that. But I also was sort of reacting to the and I don't think anybody's really taking. I'd hope that there aren't people that are actually taking pleasure in this stuff, but I guess what people need to realize, and I won't get into the details necessarily, but justice being done, cleared of wrong, that's not what happened, right? We have evidence, and here's what's fascinating. This is actually, we're going to lead out of this segment. I'm going to talk to the real issues and why Christjahn was here, did it admirably with a tennis ball that he didn't know was coming toward him. But here's what's fascinating to me. Michael Brown is on videotape. Maybe. No one has really identified that it's him that I've heard of. And we don't have much... okay, I'm getting emails from my partner here. Interesting. Okay. Well, we have... I'm not going to address those, Doc, if you're watching. I can't do it the way that you do it. Maybe after the next segment. But... You have a kid on videotape pushing a shopkeeper and walking out. We don't know anything about what happened, and there have been denials that it was him, but certainly looked like maybe a crime had been committed. Technically, he's still innocent until proven guilty, just like this officer was. Isn't it interesting how he has been castigated as a thug who was breaking the law and deserved to be shot by this officer? But Officer Darren Wilson is also... Hey, wait, hold on, everybody. Don't jump to conclusions. He's innocent until proven guilty, and now he's been proven guilty. No, the jury declined to find probable cause. That's my takeaway. It's I'm not sitting here right now, casting judgment on this officer. I read some of his testimony, the transcript of his testimony, and it was compelling, And frankly, I don't know what to think about the whole thing because I wasn't there, but. Let's show a little restraint, folks. Let's show a little bit of class. And there doesn't need to be a winner and a loser on everything. Sometimes tragedies are just tragedies. They're not... Sometimes things aren't meant to be political point scoring. And that was my main objection. Christjahn, we're going to go to a break here. Do you have anything to follow up?
No, I completely agree. I think you see kind of the knee-jerk reaction from both sides that's just very frustrating from the point of view of somebody who really would like to step back and let the system do what it's supposed to do and get to the truth of this. When you see the various sides jumping in and throwing their 2 cents in there, I think when it comes to the conservative side of this, it is frustrating that in cases like this and in cases like the Trayvon Martin, George Zimmerman case, there does seem to be an assumption that whoever, whether it was Zimmerman or whether it was the officer in this case, there's just an assumption that they could have done no wrong, and that anything to cast a light on them in any way other than that is seen as somehow a conspiracy theory or just various things you hear, and it's very frustrating.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to be right back here after a short message from our sponsors. Certainly check them out. We've got Des Moines Anesthesia. We've got Halo Capital, Bertroshan Associates, Labinas Law Firm, and go to their respective websites. You can call Des Moines Anesthesia PC at 515-574-6442. You can check out all kinds of good stuff. I've got another post for the website going up soon at DocandLefty.com. We are also on Facebook, Twitter. I have a phone. You can find me. You can talk to me. I'm fairly responsive, but we'll be right back. Thanks for tuning in.
Can I help you?
Bertroshan Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertrosh, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast 1 Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. You know, I never get to really see myself on air, and I got to say that I need better posture because I look like a hulking brute here. Maybe I'm just kind of trying to pump myself up because of some latent inferiority complex, but Doc's not here to diagnose that, is he? Anyway, we got my good buddy Christjahn Beck, the president of the Iowa State Atheist and Agnostic Society. Now, Christjahn, I did not know this about you until probably, I want to say 6-7 months ago. Just, it was one of those things. You hadn't been as vocal about it, and you certainly weren't going on radio shows and becoming sort of a media darling the way that you've become, and garnering in honestly 4 short weeks a lot more fame than Doc and I have been able to assess in 2.5 years of doing this radio show and podcast. So tell our listeners, I know that if you listen to the Fallon Forum, you probably listen to this show if you just kind of go right on down the line on the webcast1live.com broadcasts. But in case that there is no overlap, tell our listeners what you do, what your organization's about, and what your role is.
Sure. So I am the president of the Iowa State University Atheist and Agnostic Society. Like you said, I've been active with the group for a couple years now. I took over as president just this semester. So it's something that it's been on my mind for a long time. Both my parents and both my grandfathers are ministers. So I grew up literally and figuratively in the church. So these issues of faith and related topics are something that I have been neck deep in my entire life. And really in the last several years, I have left my faith and become increasingly active in the secular atheist and agnostic community, both online, which is tons of fun for anybody who's ever done that, and here in Central Iowa. So our role as the Atheist and Agnostic Society at Iowa State University is both to provide a forum that people can come and talk about these issues. Mm-hmm. If they need help working through them. It's often a really difficult transition, working your way out of your faith with friends and family. So we both provide kind of a support system, mm-hmm. Which is something that's very lacking in the secular community. The church still has a fantastic monopoly on that, it seems, but also a place to talk about a lot of these issues, about morality, about philosophy, about science, about theology, in a way that you can't really in many other settings, certainly not in the church or in most churches. That's a generalization. But we think it's an important service. And personally, I've really tried to get out there and make people aware of this because it's only useful if people are aware of it. If we're just a group of 6 or 7 of us saying that this is a service we're providing the community and not doing anything to make people aware that we're there, that's empty words. So I've done whatever I can to get out there, let people know that we're there, that we're open to the public even. I mean, there's lots of fantastic groups in Central Iowa. We're just one of many. The Iowa Atheists and Free Thinkers are another great example here in Des Moines. So I've just really kind of taken up the reins and decided that this is something that's very important to me and that I think is beneficial to Central Iowa. So I'm just doing whatever I can. You're giving me way too much credit for my popularity here, but I appreciate it.
Well, what's your membership look like?
It's an interesting question, because at the end of last semester, I wasn't exaggerating when I said it was 6 or 7 of us. It was literally 6 or 7 of us at that last meeting. After putting in a lot of time with a lot of help from other members of the group, our first meeting had 55 people. That's
really
5. Yep. At the beginning of the semester, and we have maintained, with any student organization, as a semester goes on, you atrophy somewhat, and you lose some members just as disinterest and stuff like that starts to take over. But we have maintained a core attendance of anywhere between 30 and 40 members. We have at least 3 weekly activities that people can be involved in, including a Bible study on Sunday mornings, which is a lot of fun and interesting to explain that to people. It's growing. It's growing quickly.
Fantastic. What has there been? Now, I would assume that since you started off with 6 or 7, was that kind of the membership before you took over?
Yes. At the last semester, there was really about 10 of us who were consistently coming. By the end of the semester, interest had dwindled even below that.
How long has the group been around at Ames?
It was started in 1999. I want to make sure I get that right. Yeah, 1999 by Dr. Hector Avalos, who's our faculty advisor, well-known, pitches classes. Anybody who's going to Iowa State, take his biblical studies courses. They're fantastic. But so he started it with a group of students in 1999. One of the original members, I want to say, was Amanda Knief, who was the in-house counsel for a long time and still works with the American Atheists Association. So she's a higher up in the atheist movement. And it has gone since then. So this would be its 15th year.
Okay. I guess, how much pushback have you experienced? Now, you're in a college town.
Yep.
Ames isn't nearly as liberal as my alma mater, University of Iowa.
No one's perfect.
Touche. You get to say that until September of next year. 15 years and counting. That's all I have to say. Plus, we're more arrogant. But anyway, what kind of pushback do you guys experience, if any? And maybe there isn't much in Ames or Story County more broadly.
It very much depends. We do get pushback, like you said. Iowa State University being not primarily, but in large part engineering and agriculture, it is more conservative than the People's Republic of Iowa City down there. We do get some pushback, but it's usually not mean-spirited. We get a lot of questions. We get a lot of preachers coming to campus. There's a lot of student groups, Christian student groups on campus. There's some Muslim student groups. We get a lot of questions, and we make ourselves publicly available on a consistent basis because we know there's questions and because we know there's going to be some pushback, and it's important to us to confront that head on. It's natural, and we don't fault people for it. We have a lot of good conversations. From the community as a whole, there's not a ton of pushback. I think some of that goes to the fact that we're still not a huge organization. I think the larger we get, the more pushback we'll get. At this point, it's pretty easy to disregard us, although that's changing slowly. So, and quickly now. But we certainly do get, I mean, just this past week, I had somebody walk by and have a couple choice 4-letter words for me as I was standing out on campus. I said hi to him, and I got a couple expletives thrown back at me.
That's a very loving thing to do.
It is, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that. I was in the middle of about an hour-long conversation with a Catholic student, and it was a fantastic conversation.
We'll get to that in a second. We've got to take another break. We'll be right back. We're here with Christjahn Beck to talk about some stuff. We're kind of delving into a little bit broadly here, but we're going to drill down at the next segment. So stick around, check out our sponsors, leave us a message on Facebook. You can call the studio if you feel like it. Maddie, if you don't mind flashing the number there on the screen, I'd appreciate it. 244-0077, 515-244-0077. We will take your call, and I will be very, very nice to you. I can't speak for Christian, but we'll be right back after these messages. Thanks for sticking around.
50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
See them here, see them there. You got bad credit? We don't care.
Visit emetroford.com for your guaranteed credit approval. Good credit, bad credit, no credit. Everybody drives with guaranteed credit approval at emetroford.com. Visit emetroford.com today.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. We're talking about my second favorite thing that isn't related to myself or my personality. We're talking about atheism. We're talking about religion. We're talking about... we're going to talk about a little politics now with respect to those things with my guest, Christjahn Beck. You've seen him on the Fallon Forum. You've seen him around Ames. You've seen his group becoming more active in the community, which, and I got to tell you, there's nothing more... I've never been formally a member of or involved in any atheist or agnostic society because I don't... I'll just put it out there because I don't care. Mm-hmm. Not about organizing and certainly not about being a member of something, but I don't care because my agnostic views are not religious in nature.
Sure.
Okay. I don't feel the need to organize because when, here's a very good example. Someone said to me once, they were going to church. Okay. Now, whenever I visit my folks in Minneapolis, or my sister lives up there too with her family, they go to church every Sunday, and I go with them because I feel like to me, it's a separation. I'm going to go with my family. I'm going to do what they like to do while I'm visiting them. Sure. And sometimes my folks want me to, we don't have a church down here, so it's a little bit more uncomfortable, but I go with them. I don't mind. I sing all the songs and I participate in everything except the prayer stuff. And somebody said to me once, isn't that just, that's got to be so tough, and don't you feel so awkward, and don't the other believers around you feel weird for having you there? And my response is I don't care because their faith is not something that bothers me as an agnostic person. It has no logical connection to how I live my life. It would be the same to me, and this is going to be very offensive to a lot of believers, and I don't mean it in a condescending way, and I apologize because I've offended people before. It would be like the same thing if somebody said, well, are you uncomfortable when I read to you Goldilocks and the Three Bears? Of course not. If that's what you want to do, that's fine with me. It doesn't bother me at all. Now, a lot of atheists, and I'm going to make a slight distinction between the two of us, a lot of atheists feel differently about that, and that's what we're going to talk about. Bill Maher, Sam Harris, and Ben Affleck raised a minor kerfuffle on the internet about Bill Maher's increasingly, and I'll say hostile. I'm going to say hostile because that's how it comes across, and that's how believers characterize it. His hostile attitude towards Islam as a religion that practices violence, that condones violence, whose membership, more often than not, agrees with brutal and barbaric tactics that are practiced in mainstream Islam. And Ben Affleck took exception, saying you're being a bigot, you're casting aspersions on an entire group of people based on the actions of a few. That's not right, you can't do that. And Bill Maher said, well, that's basically the problem with liberals, of which he is one, basically. Liberals want to be so PC about everything, and they're willing to do all kinds of things about Christianity, but they're not willing to go after Islam in any sustainable way. I don't know if you saw the episode of Real Time where that came from.
Yep.
Or read about it. But what's your response to that? And how would you be on Team Bill or would you be on Team Ben?
In this particular instance, I am on Team Bill, and I'm not going to say that very often, but I do agree more with the way that Bill Maher characterized it. That's not to say I completely agree with his opinion, but in so much as I understand the case that him and Sam Harris laid out, I do, for the most part, agree. I think when it comes to this issue, liberalism in the United States of America, which I would consider myself a moderate liberal, on certain issues like this does fall a little bit short in that it offends our democratic and egalitarian sensibilities to say, okay, this isn't just the action of a couple crazy people. This might be rooted in something larger. This might be rooted in the faith of the person involved here. It's very easy to see that and see it trending towards Islamophobia. Or similarly, we would see something like this in the case that in the case that we just brought up at the beginning of the show. You see something trending towards racism, and you start to think, okay, let's put on the brakes here. The liberal response is usually to err on the side of caution, err on the side of giving somebody the benefit of the doubt. And I think in this particular case, Bill Maher and Sam Harris bring up a very important point, which they didn't have enough time to completely describe because it quickly devolved into name calling, and Ben Affleck got very offended, and then Reza Aslan later,
yeah, he wasn't on the show that day.
Right, much more eloquently defended the position, although Ben Affleck did an admirable job on the show, relatively speaking. There is a problem when what we see with modern Islam is essentially, and this is a massive generalization, what we saw in Christianity of years past and what we saw in Judaism of many years past. And there is an unwillingness within liberal circles in the United States to say, look, there might be a problem here that's rooted in Islam itself. There might be a problem. I mean, it's easy to say that bad people are going to do bad things regardless, good people are going to do good things regardless, and that Islam or any faith tradition, if you're an angry person, you're going to have an angry version of Islam. If you're a good person, you're going to have a caring, loving version of Islam. What gets overlooked is that there are aspects of these faiths, Christianity included, which push people who may not be naturally predisposed towards those actions to doing bad things. And I think an analogy that I've been making and talking to people about this is something that we see here in America, which is if a Christian scientist raises a child, and we've seen court cases like this in the United States recently, who has bacterial pneumonia, and they refuse to take the child to the hospital, and that child dies, we rightly draw a distinction between that kind of death and just a sociopathic random murder. We draw a distinction there because we acknowledge that a caring, loving parent with every good intention in the world can, operating under poor advice or under a false premise, allow something to happen to their child, which we say is punishable. There's a distinction in the way that we punish it, and I think that's fair. We don't have a problem with that. We don't have a problem saying, in this particular case, you have done something that our criminal justice system can address. That's fine when it's Christians. When it comes to Islam, we want to say, wait, you have to understand the context. You have to understand the geopolitical scenario. You have to understand the history.
And we're going to get into that in just a second. We're coming up to another break. We're here with Christjahn Beck. Sponsors, Facebook, Twitter. Go check them out. We'll be right back.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. You know, this half hour, I say this all the time on the show, but the first half hour just burns by. We do not have enough time, Christjahn, and if I didn't have to go back to the office immediately after the show and file some stuff that the court screwed up yesterday, we'd go out and have a beer and talk about this for the next 4 hours, and my loving, caring fiance would have to just put up with it because I'm having a great time, and I hope that you listeners out there are too, and aren't getting too angry at two educated non-Muslims talking about Islam, because there's a little sensitivity there, and I'm going to bring in.
Absolutely.
I'm going to come in. I'm not going to defend Mr. Affleck as we're very reductively giving them the standards to carry, but I will say this about religion in general and about Islam in particular, since that's the big boogeyman of our age. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, religion, the way that it is practiced and the way that it is formulated in societies, is a fairly neutral framework. We can talk about all the things that religions have done or inspired that have been terrible throughout history, and we can talk about all the things that they've done or inspired that have been beneficial throughout history. And I think there's probably a wash. I know that Christopher Hitchens and Dawkins would say that there are a lot more atrocities committed in the name of religion than religious benefits. But for the sake of argument, there have been both. There are examples of both. Whenever, yes, in my mind, if a system can have a negative and positive outcome, to me, it's a wash. To me, that renders it value neutral. It is what religion mixed with the consent of a governed people accomplishes that's really terrible and really tragic. And there are myriad examples throughout history of all faiths. The ancient Israelite sect, or the ancient Israelites were governed in a theocratic way and rampaged, and if you're to believe the Bible, rampaged and murdered across Mesopotamia. The Christians throughout the Middle Ages did the same exact thing, fighting numerous battles back and forth, even against each other in the 16th century during the Reformation. Yep. Massacres at the hands of the Catholic Church, ordered by the Pope, because the Pope was in the pocket of the Italian government, the French. There were functional theocracies throughout Europe, and you're seeing the same exact thing today. Now, theocracy is a problem everywhere. And it is something that our Constitution was designed to prevent in this country. We are not, because of all the danger and all the risk, but we're seeing in Islam modern countries with modern weaponry and modern thinking, yes, adopting a theocratic government that, due to culture and due to tradition, is not only accepted but preferred. And that tradition of we are linking the divine to the corporeal, mm-hmm, allows the anesthetizing of outrage, where, hey, not only is our government, not only is our religion and our interpretation, which can be anything, mm-hmm, telling us to stone this woman, but the law allows it. That doesn't happen in a country like the United States, where there's a Christian majority that up until about 110 years ago believed in their faith tradition that raping a man or raping a woman was okay as long as there was no such thing as spousal rape. Right. And Christians thought that was just fine. Yeah. That doesn't happen anymore. because the rule of law has prevailed in a society that has a strong tradition of separating the state from the religion. I think that's Islam's problem. I think that Islam's central problem is not definitional violence, but its propensity to import religious practice into systems of government that then use the power of the state and the consent of the people to carry out the most drastic forms and punishment that you don't see in modern countries. And the disconnect in the West that used to have that tradition but moved past it and is being confronted with it again. The idea that that's so shocking to me is shocking. That's sort of my take on it, and why I think that Mr. Maher and Mr. Harris oversimplify a very complicated, nuanced problem.
I think you're exactly right. Aspects of what you said I agree with, most of it, and there are a couple things I disagree with. I think that you are absolutely right when you say they oversimplify the problem. There's nuance to it, and part of that's just because of the forum they have. They're dealing with commercial breaks.
Oh, of course.
So part of that is just a result of that. But you're absolutely right in that it's a very nuanced problem. But I don't think, for one thing, going back to what you said about if there's good things that are done in the name of anything, religion or otherwise, and bad things, that it's essentially a wash. I would disagree with that in that I think many of the good things that religion has accomplished, which there are, and this is one of the most frustrating things in talking to my fellow atheists, is there is a movement to discredit much of the good that has come from various faith traditions. For example, Christianity. To deny that Christianity fundamentally changed how we deal with the poor and the indigent is just denying a historical fact. That is something that is very frustrating to me. That said, many of the things that have been gained through various religions, if you can find another way to do that, which I think you can, that doesn't hijack in all the baggage that comes with religion, I think that we owe it to society to do that. Because and I don't think you can just say it's a wash, because there are many good things that have been done in the name. I mean, just today, the Catholic Church still does as much, if not more, than any country to in terms of helping out third world countries to supply food, to supply healthcare especially. But also, when you go into sub-Saharan Africa, which is riddled with an AIDS epidemic, and you preach abstinence instead of promoting safe sex and condoms, there is a fundamental problem. I have trouble calling that a wash.
Let me ask you this, though, because we're talking about moral calculations based on binaries, right? We're talking about whether or not an organism, and this is how atheists talk about it, and agnostics talk about it this way too. They talk about religion either being good or bad for people. They talk about it as being either beneficial or destructive. Okay, good versus evil. Let's just go there. Let's just call it. Let's use normative terms.
Okay.
Religion is either good or evil. My point is that religion is what you make of it, is what you bring to it. If we're both going to agree as people of non-faith that religion is essentially a construct that men and women have created for themselves to organize in a way that is divinely, or that seeks to understand the supernatural, what have you. I don't even want to get into how religions form. I'm reading Dennett's book about it. It's great, but still, if we're going to acknowledge that, then we also have to acknowledge that men and women as a whole, the whole human race, we're neither evil nor good. We're a neutral species that practices evil or good depending on the relative outrage of our morality at a given time. Religion is the same thing. It's the exact same thing, because while the Catholic Church was cravenly and evilly hiding child abuse, like rampant child abuse through its ranks, and should be pilloried for that. They were doing the things that they were establishing not missions. They were establishing food pantries and medicine and giving to the poor and charity, all that kind of work. And so, if we're going to say that one evil is worth one good, right? How do we calculate? Because we can't. It's in the metaphysical terminology of good versus evil, it's a wash. Religion is a neutral force in the world that flows with the wind as whoever's I'm not going to mix my metaphors. That flows with the tide, depending on whose hand's on the tiller. You're going to respond to that. We're going to come up to a break, folks. Check out our sponsors, please. They make sure that, and check out the webcast1live.com sponsors. They keep the lights on in here, and they make sure that our wonderful producer Maddie is well taken care of, so she can take such good care of us. Levinas Law Firm, Bertrosh and Associates, Halo Capital, Des Moines Anesthesia PC. We've got a website, docandlefty.com, that I write for, that Doc writes for. So depending on who you agree with or who you want to be mad at, check out that website, Facebook, Twitter, and just be active and be responsive, and we would love to hear from you. So we'll be right back.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd block any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still your best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're here with my good buddy Christjahn Beck, president of the Iowa State Atheist and Agnostic Society. We're discussing we're kind of digesting 2 months later the Real Time with Bill Maher episode where we're talking about Islam and the problems that Islam has in the world. And if you just join us now, Christjahn laid out his case for some of these problems, and we're kind of discussing whether or not my view that religion is more of a framework as opposed to I don't know what you'd call it, a morally directed thing. Would that be a way to describe my argument? I guess that religion has a life of its own from a moral, or has a moral center that it fails or succeeds sometimes. Because I don't think it does. I think it twists in the wind.
I think it does, and I think that's part of the problem. I think, for one thing, your characterization of it as a neutral force in the scheme of things.
In the balance, like
right.
Acknowledging both sides of it.
Absolutely. I think historically, I think there's something to be said for the case you're making. I disagree in that even if I grant you that it has been a neutral force morally, there are many other areas where we see the influence of religion being detrimental to society.
Sure.
So even if you want to, if you want to say that in the grand scheme of things, the morality issue is a wash, which I don't think it is, and I could make a very compelling case, given time, that it is in fact not. Not only in the Middle East now, but in the United States now, where we see a much more moderate form of religion, including Islam. But I think even if I were to grant you that it is, in the balance of things, it is a wash, what you see is a way that religious thinking, and now it's my turn to tick off a bunch of people, so I apologize and how condescending I'm about to be. I just kind of have
and doesn't it just irritate the crap out of you that we have to make that a disclaimer? But go ahead.
It does, but my family are all ministers, so I'm quite used to that disclaimer.
Yeah.
So even if I grant that in the balance of things, the morality issue is a wash, something that you see, and something in researching for this appearance, and after watching the Reza Aslan response to the Bill Maher interview, one of the things you see, and I saw a slide at a Neil deGrasse Tyson event recently, which was very eye-opening, showed Nobel Prizes awarded over the last 100 and some years, and broke it down by faith background. The Middle East was at one point the scientific and mathematical capital of the world.
That's right.
And that is not me using hyperbole to try and win over my Muslim friends out there.
Do you like our number system?
Exactly.
Yep.
Our number system, algebra, the way that we talk about mathematics today is rooted in the Middle East. It just is. That's a historical fact. What you've seen since the rise of Islam is not only an oppressive social and moral regime, but a degrading of the scientific abilities of a part of the world that used to lead the world in that area. So this slide that Tyson showed Nobel Prizes in both the sciences and in peace prizes broken down by faith background. There's somewhere over 800. Judaism was massively overrepresented. They make up maybe 0.1% of the world's population. They're about 30% of the Nobel Prizes. Christianity slightly higher, even at about a 35% total of the world's population, 30 to 35, depending on what you look at. Islam, out of the over 800 prizes awarded, have won 11, and either 7 or 8 of those were peace prizes, which means this part of the world, where science and math used to not only be something that was seen as a good, but they used to be better at it than everybody else, has now fallen back.
Remember that, and I understand all of that, and I acknowledge all of that as being true.
Okay.
Islam formed in and around Saudi Arabia in about, 500 AD, 600 AD, and swept the world, basically. So swept the known world, North Africa, all the way to Spain, in various forms of the empire / caliphate, however you want to call it, during the Middle Ages. If you want to think about the Cold War, that was the hot war between Christianity and Islam.
Absolutely.
And that was the period when Islam was contributing everything to math and science through the strongest international phase of Islam as a thing. Was when that was happening. What you see now is, and when you talk about so Islam didn't rise recently. It rose a while back, and what you saw was a resurgence in the 19th century of very, very militant, radical Wahhabi Muslims coming from the deserts of Saudi Arabia to take that continent, the birthplace of Islam, and the surrounding area by storm, and infect the local. All the other local sects, the Shias, the Sunnis, the Alawites, everybody else, with this more restrictive, recidivistic kind of Islam that came through this, that it was vulnerable to for whatever reason. I don't know that. Maybe it's a flaw in the faith itself. I'm not sure, but Islam has only been on its heels as a cultural and a scientific contributor for the last 200 years. Prior to this, it's a recent phenomena that I think has less to do with the religion itself and more to do with the rise of liberal governments that have been in opposition to it. Because you can have a theocracy when everybody else is a theocracy, because there aren't no fundamental disagreements here other than your religion, which is a problem, obviously. Governments with strong separation ideals trying to dictate to this region of the world that doesn't have those same kinds of traditions. The two don't cross, the two don't mix, and the imperialism and the imperialism that resulted in the resentment of that imperialism, I think, is what has driven this militant response to Islam, coupled with the fact that, with my argument about theocratic governments prior, has driven a very, very, and rightfully so, historically proud group of people into the dirt. And I frankly have no answer. It is a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. But I don't think, well, if men were angels, we'd need no governments. If men were angels, we'd need no gods. So we're dealing with human populations that can't get it together. But we're at another break. I'm going to let Christjahn and I go back and forth about this in the last segment. Stick around. We'll be right back. Facebook and Twitter, our sponsors are great. We love having them. Stick around.
Bertroche and Associates will provide you with a friendly, caring, and confidential place to find help for mental health concerns. We are ready for your call. We are proud to work with military personnel and their families. Our doctor, Dr. J. Patrick Bertroche, provides a full range of psychiatric services for children, adolescents, and adults in a forthright and informative manner while maintaining a casual, comfortable, and relaxed atmosphere. Our licensed mental health therapists provide individual counseling to children, adolescents, and adults, including couples and marital counseling. Visit our website at bertrocheandassociates.com for more information or call 515-334-9484. Our offices are located at 5525 Meredith Drive in Des Moines, just east of Skate North off Merle Hay Road. Isn't it time to talk to someone? Take care of yourself and your family. Contact Bertroche and Associates.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here for the last segment, and I think that I've maintained my guest's interests. We're here with Christjahn Beck, the president of the Iowa State Atheist and Agnostic Society. We're talking about some of the problems with Islam and some of the problems with the characterizations. And while I don't think that everybody who criticizes Islam, and this is the point that a lot of folks and my partner Doc Bertroche say about this too, is, hey, you liberals, you atheists, you agnostics, criticize Christianity every single day. Mm-hmm. And you make point, and that's here in this country, you throw pig's blood on the crucifix, and you're throwing a parade. You do that to the crescent moon or to a picture of the prophet, and you're probably getting killed. There's a huge problem with that, and so why aren't you harder on Islam? Well, I mean, for me personally, like I said at the beginning of the show, is when it comes to religions, for me, I've disengaged myself from getting too bent out of shape about how religious people operate, mm-hmm. unless they're killing people. Then I have a really hard time with it. But Christianity in this country is in power. Mm-hmm. It doesn't know what it means to be American Christians. You're the most spoiled Christians. Go to Jordan sometime. Go to Syria. See what Christian persecution looks like before you criticize an agnostic person or an atheist for saying, you know what, we get a little bit ticked off by the Christmas music in November. Talk about that amongst yourselves for a second before you jump on us for maybe taking a softer touch with the minority religion in this country that is the majority religion in a very economically deprived area of the world that's still stinging from the effects of imperialism to 150 years later. So that's my editorial on that. But I guess to put a bow on this, my friend, do you see a distinction between, and let's just make it easy, between Christianity and Islam today? The way that is Islam fundamentally flawed with violence in a way that Christianity as a doctrine, I'm talking about the doctrines now, not as how they're practiced, is the doctrine flawed in a way that the doctrine of Christianity is not? Based on the doctrine, no. Based on the doctrine, Christianity is just as bad, if not worse, than Islam. The Bible and the Old Testament and the New Testament, some too, reaffirmed. With the I did not come to supplant the law, but to affirm the law. And I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. That's right. The Bible is inherently more violent than the Quran. The problem is you cannot divorce the practice from the doctrine, because if you're going to speak specifically about the doctrine of a faith, you're talking about the Quran, you're talking about the Bible as it's laid out. Mm-hmm. Very few people, everybody claims to follow it to a T, and everybody does it differently. So you can't divorce the practice from the doctrine. So in that sense, the doctrine is just as bad, if not worse, for Christianity. I mean, based purely on doctrine, Westboro Baptist has a more solid biblical foundation to their theology than the Catholic Church. And wow, I just angered a whole bunch of people. The problem is what you see in modern Islam is not this pluralistic view of interpretations, which mm-hmm. leads to Reformation and which leads to
a pacifying of a lot of these issues. It's very, very closed. It's very, very isolated. It's very, very controlled from the top, like you've been saying.
Yep.
You can't divorce them. So in practice, Islam has a problem right now that Christianity has as well, but to a much lesser degree. Judaism has had and still has, but to a much, much lesser degree.
Right.
So, I mean, to put me on the spot and ask, based on the doctrine, which is worse, it's an important question. It's an important question to dive into deeply in the theology of all the faiths.
Is it answerable then?
I don't... It is probably answerable, but it's going to take a lot longer than an hour on this show, which I'm happy to do over beer sometime. But practically, and how it affects our lives and the lives of Americans and the lives of people all over the world, we have to look at how it's practiced and how it's interpreted. And that is where we run into problems, because ISIS is a major problem. Al-Qaeda came out and condemned ISIS for being too extreme. That's crazy that something like that happens, that something like that can happen. As far as its implications for the geopolitical map of the world and how we are going to deal with these issues morally and politically as a people, we can't separate doctrine from practice. The two have to be one and the same, because if there's ever going to be change, there's a quote from the ex-Muslims of North America co-president, whose name is Muhammad Saeed, who said, let's see if I can find the quote here. I met this man in Omaha, and he's a brilliant man. He said, "One can criticize the Islamic ideology without treating Muslims as themselves problematic or incapable of reform. There are true Muslim reformists who are willing to call a spade while working for the true betterment of their peoples, but their voices are drowned out by the noise of apologists who are all too often aided by the Western left." And I think that speaks volumes about where we're at in terms of this conversation politically in this country.
Let me add that that's a fascinating point. I think specifically about a couple of the things that you said. In my view of this, and Reza Aslan has talked about this himself, I think that this is the Muslim Reformation right now. I think that over the last several decades, aided by Great Britain and France in arbitrarily slicing up and enforcing populations that didn't necessarily have a problem with each other before it happened, but and also by the concept of European nationalism, which was foreign to the region before colonialism. I believe that what we're seeing now, and if we think of Islam as Shia and Sunni, which it's not, it's a lot of different things. And there are a lot of different ways to interpret how they interact with each other, and Sharia itself has like 7 different schools of thought behind it. So that's a really complicated pool of people. But if we talk about that, they're fighting a war that has blown out of proportion recently, that they've been arguing about for a long time, in a similar way that the Catholics and the Protestants fought. Not nearly as bloody. The populations are bigger and the weapons are better, but it's over the same kinds of things. And you're right. The problem for our country and the problem for our political system is that we now live in a world, and it's impossible to extricate at this point. We live in a world where if we were to say, you know what, this is a religious reformation that's going on, let's fight it, let's let them fight it out, we would have the blood of millions of people on our hands if we stood by and did nothing. Am I an interventionist? No, I'm not. But neither am I somebody who says we should stand by and let the barbarians kill each other if we can help it at all. And I think conversations like this, not to aggrandize it, but go a step in the right direction rather than fights the way that Mr. Marr, Mr. Affleck, and Mr. Harris had. I think that Ben was saying the right things in the wrong way, and I think that Bill Maher, while oversimplifying, was saying the wrong things. Well, it's easy. That's too easy to say. they all missed the point, and they all missed the how complicated the situation was. And even though I'd grant them that it's hard to do in the way that they do it on that show, Bill Maher has said these kinds of things in his stand-up special. He said these kind of things in long-form interviews and written about them. Mm-hmm. These are his views. And while I don't criticize him for much, I do criticize him for allowing his view to be so reduced to a caricature of an Islamophobist, or somebody who is Islamophobic. I don't think he is. I don't think he's a bigot, but I think that his viewpoint lends itself to that the way that a violent outbreak in an Islamic country lends itself to the characterization of Islam being a violent religion. My friend, I'm going to give you the last word.
Alrighty. I think it's probably in order for me to stand up a little bit for Bill Maher and for Sam Harris in saying that I think you and me are pretty much on the same page here. Mm-hmm. I think you and me seem to agree. I think where I will come to Bill Maher's defense, and especially Sam Harris's defense, who is not a person that I often come to the defense of, honestly. I think as part of this conversation, whether or not based on the doctrine, Islam or Christianity or Judaism or Buddhism is more problematic, we cannot right now divorce religion from the acts that are being done in the name of religion. Specifically in this case, and what we're talking about today, we cannot divorce Islam from the actions of some of these people who are doing these things in the name of Allah. If we allow ourselves to slip into this PC egalitarian mindset where we cannot openly talk about one of these issues, that is a very important part, at the very least, a very important part of a multifaceted approach to why these things are happening. If we allow ourselves to be politically correct and to not even bring Islam and the doctrine of Islam into the equation, I think we're missing a very important and crucial part of this conversation, and we're not going to get a lot done if we don't pay attention to it.
Well said. Thank you very much, Christjahn. That's it for the show. Thank you to all our sponsors. Thank you to Lubinas Law Firm, Des Moines Anesthesia PC, Bertroshan Associates, Halo Capital. Thank you to Jen Allen, our social media experts, Maddie Kane behind the board on the ones and twos. Check us out on docandlefty.com. I've got a piece coming up in the next couple of days. Check us out on our Facebook page. Respond, comment, join the conversation because we need your voices as well. It's easy for me to bloviate and wax poetic on the air, but we need folks like you out there listening to us to keep us all in check and to provide your perspectives, because we certainly do enjoy those as well. Anything coming up in the next couple of days for the society? Any events that you want to plug before we get out of here?
Atheist and Agnostic Society, as soon as the Thanksgiving break is over, we will be meeting Monday nights at 7 in the Campanile Room at the Memorial Union on Iowa State's campus. We would love to see anybody who might be atheist or agnostic out there looking for a place to come talk. We'd welcome you.
That's a great point. Open to the public. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Good night.
Hi, I'm Representative Tom Shaw, and I love these guys, both of them.